Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're going to be going through my February reading roundup and I'll talk you through what I read this month and what I thought about it. We're just going to dive straight in. I read 2 books and a play this month, which isn't fantastic. I was hoping to get through some more, but I ended up getting really busy with school stuff and just reading unfortunately fell a little bit to the side. But fingers crossed for the next coming month that I do a little bit better. And at the end of the day, what really matters is that I enjoy what I read, not how much I end up getting through. We're just going to dive straight in with the first book I read, which is actually a book that I have read before, and it is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I read this book in 2019 for the first time, I think, and I loved it the first time I read it, and I've interacted with content about it online on and off since I read it for the first time. But I seen someone talking about it on Tumblr a couple of weeks ago and I realised I didn't really remember it the way I wanted to and the way I thought I did. So I decided that it'd been long enough for me to justify rereading it instead of reading the many books that are on my TBR. And I loved it. I really like this book, and when reading it remembered how much I really liked this book. I am a very emotional reader. I cry so easily at literally anything, and this book was no exception. I was bubbling like a baby multiple times throughout it. I really enjoy this book and I got so invested in it all over again, and I think it worked in my favour actually that I'd forgotten so much of it because I got to re-experience it again. And I suppose if I ever read it again in the future, then I can go in looking for little things that I'd missed this time. I really think what works for this book, what works so well in this book's favour, is how likeable the characters are and how easy it is to root for them. I think sometimes the only thing that holds me back from really highly rating a book or really enjoying a book is that I just don't really like the characters, or I find it hard to connect with the characters. But I did not have that problem with this book. I absolutely adore all of the characters, and even the ones you're not meant to like, I just found so interesting. I just got into this book so quickly, so wholly immersed right from the beginning through to the end. And I think it's wonderful. I think it's nice, light-hearted romance when it needs to be, and obviously it definitely tackles some much less joyful issues, but I think that it does it all so well, and I think the fact that this book is actually quite funny really helps. So even when things are a riot and you're like, oh no, and it's really sad, you're confident that the characters will be able to get through it and bring you through it because they're hilarious. I found myself chuckling out loud a good couple of times reading this, just from the characters, quips, the way they speak to each other. I think this book is wonderful, and I absolutely cannot wait to read Casey's new book that comes out this year. I think it's already out in the US, but I don't think it's out in the UK yet. It's in my basket and I'm waiting till I can order it and read it, because if this is any indication, I think I'm going to love that one too. My next read of February was a play, and it was Hangman by Martin McDonagh. I wasn't sure if I'd reread The Pillowman last month, but I don't think I have. This author, Martin McDonagh, has another play called The Pillowman, and it is one of my favourite plays of all time. And it is the play that I read that made me realise how much I loved drama and how much I loved the theatre. So I'm always excited to read his work. I'm slowly but surely working my way through his body of work because he's got a good couple of plays out. This is one of his more recent publishes, and it is about one of the men who used to carry out hangings in England before capital punishment was banned here. And I really enjoyed this play. To be straight, from the beginning, the ending sort of disappointed me, and I think it lowered my rating by quite a bit because I was left feeling a little confused and a little unsatisfied. But the thing that I enjoyed most about this play, and the thing that I enjoy most about Martin McDonagh's work on a whole, is he has such a distinct voice and style when he's writing, even though obviously he's crafting all these characters that then people are going to have their own voice and distinctions to perform, that I find wonderful. He writes in a lot of quite short sentences and he repeats things very often, and I think it's very clever, and I think it almost always makes the plays funnier. I just think these little quirks he has when he's writing makes it more enjoyable to read. I also think it makes the characters much more human, especially when you then perform them or get to see them being performed, because they follow speech patterns that people actually have already, instead of you having to sort of add that life into characters, if that makes sense. Which I think is something that I definitely enjoy about plays sometimes over novels, is that I think the way characters speak in plays is often much easier to relate to as a person than dialogue in books. Not always, but sometimes, and I definitely think that Martin McDonagh is a playwright who does that. I just enjoy his style of writing. I think he's very clever, he's very funny. My only issue with his work is I find sometimes the genre that he writes in calls for a gratuitous use of slurs, and in most of his plays they are within context and I have less of an issue with it. For example, The Pillowman is set in a sort of totalitarian dictatorship, sort of with a European vibe, so your brain automatically goes to Nazi Germany, and you know, they definitely were not nice to minorities. That was the point. So it makes sense that police officers in a totalitarian state are not minding their language or the way it offends people. And even in his other plays that I've read, I definitely think that the language is subject of the time that they're written in. However, he has also written screenplays for some films that are very good films, but that I think the language is much less necessary to the time, which is something that I just think that if you're reading his stuff you should be aware of and critical of, while still enjoying his work, because those things can coincide. I think he's a very talented man. He's someone that I look up to and look up to the work of tremendously. But you have to consume media with a critical mind, and that is my main criticism of his stuff, unfortunately. And then last but not least for this month is The Knife of Never Letting Go by Patrick Ness. Straight out, I love Patrick Ness. He is one of my favourite authors. I've read maybe 80% of his novels. I think I've read all of his YA novels bar this series and one more, maybe. I've read most of his stuff and I love it. And this one was no exception. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It's massive. This is a good, chunky, dystopian series to just stick your teeth into, and that's what I did, and I really enjoyed it. The main character, Todd, speaks with a slightly different dialect to, I suppose, like standard English that you would read normally in a novel. Some of the words that he uses are not English, and I think a couple of people, I read some reviews for this when I finished, were not a fan of that, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was charming. I thought it established setting very well, because this is not real, it's not set here, it's set on a new world, and I think that little things like that really helped to establish that, and I really enjoyed it. I thought Todd was, I really liked him, and the other main thing I read in other reviews was people finding it really hard to like or connect with Todd, but I really liked him and I definitely was rooting for him. I thought that this poor boy had been thrown in the deep end of a world that not only did he not understand, but he physically did not have the tools to understand. Like, he was told that so much of his knowledge for how to proceed was in this book, but nobody had ever taught him how to read. Things like that. And I just ended up feeling so sorry for him and being so passionate about how badly I wanted him to win, and I just really enjoyed this book. I liked the way the characters were written. I liked the way the story went. It was very fast paced. I was never bored whilst reading it. I mean, I didn't like the way it ended, but I liked the way it ended. I thought it was a good way to end a book that transitioned nicely into a next part of a series, and I'm thoroughly enjoying the next part of the series currently as well, and I'm very excited to talk about parts 2 and 3 hopefully in next month's video. This series of books is called Chaos Walking, and as far as I know, the movie of it is coming out this Thursday. By the time this video goes out, it might already be out. I've not really done research into the movie, if I'm being honest, because I didn't want any spoilers until I'd finished the books. But I think the movie might be one movie of all 3 of the books, which is why I'm avoiding reading about it in case it spoils things that happen out with this one, because I don't want that. But if you have read these books and you didn't already know about the movie, maybe have a look into it and see if that's something that you could spend an afternoon or an evening doing, because the movie of his other book, A Monster Calls, was very good. I enjoyed that. I like the way his work translates into film, and I assume this won't be an exception to that. So yeah. So that is all I read this month. Again, not quite as many books as I would have liked, but there's always next month, and at least the books that I did read this month were books that I thoroughly enjoyed reading. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you took something from this video, or you found maybe a book to read that you haven't read before, although unlikely because it's not a very big list. And I will see you again soon with another video. Bye bye.